Good morning. Welcome. Excuse the droning of the fans, but it's warm. I'm melting as a ginger. I can't cope. Hopefully you can see the pencil lines. It's just very dark because it's on black card. Morning. Oh, I haven't got the bird song ready. We need bird song on a nice sunny day, painting a picture of the snow.
Do we?
Yeah. We do. Morning, Leslie. So I'm only going to be using white gouache today, so everything that's black is going to stay the colour of the card. And the paper I'm using is this. I could have used the black Van Gogh watercolour, but I thought I'd use this instead, which is the Paint On Noir multi-technique. What's the normal word for multi-technique, Jackie? Mixed media. Mixed media paper, and this is just a set of black, but they do them in about 8 different types of paper and card. They do denim coloured, so like a blue black. They do textured white. They do white. They do a sort of natural beigey colour. They do a green, a new verdigris one. They do a grey one as well. So they do loads, and they do a pad with all of them in. And it's quite nice because it's quite heavy card and it will take some water. Obviously not as much as watercolour. But I just thought this would be an interesting image. We probably won't keep it exactly as it is, but I just thought it'd be nice. Something different. Hadn't planned for a heat wave when we were doing this man standing in the rain/snow. But I think it might help cool this down a little bit. I've got my dollop of white paint on the tile. And I've just got 3 random brushes, a couple of flat ones and a thin one. Customer. So I'll give you a good, another 10 minutes or so to do. Obviously the train, you can't see much of the train. It's mainly the lights that you can see on that. But there is I've missed a bit off there, haven't I? There's a bit of a line there, and maybe there's something a little bit there. But we'll do a lot of it by eye. Like the lamp that's about there. I'll draw that in, but there's not much going on to the left or the right. I thought I'd do it landscape rather than portrait today, because I think it helps make the train feel like it's moving towards us, whereas just being stuck on the edge there, it doesn't. But it doesn't matter. You could do it portrait. You could absolutely do it portrait. So we'll be doing lots of. I don't know if you've done. You could do this in acrylic on black as well. That would work in the same way, because we're going to be creating washes so that some areas stand out more, some areas don't stand out as much. Some areas are quite a neat white, others it will be softened into the black so it goes more of a grey. So it should be quite nice to cool this down a little bit. I wonder what's next week. I'm already thinking ahead. Terrible, aren't I? Oh, a misty woodland in acrylics. That'll be quite nice. Oh, and this Saturday, don't forget, we've got our free paint along watercolour lesson on the shop's Facebook page, 11 till 12:30, and it's a boy on the beach in wellies with a fishing net, I think, a little net on a stick. So a couple more minutes and then I'll start painting. It's an interesting method today. It's almost like negative painting, I guess, because the things that we want to be black in this method, we are going to have to leave black. And it's nice that he's so strongly lit by, obviously there must be a street lamp almost above from where his shadow is, which I have drawn in. And hopefully it'll start to take life once we've got a bit of colour in, but I'm glad that the pencil lines show up just enough. Except the wonky lines I can get rid of. Maybe I ought to draw a little bit of the line for the edge of the platform. Something like that, anyway. Right, so we're going to do, where my pencil lines are, I'm going to treat as if that's almost a masking fluid type setup. So I paint around that. So for the sky area, I just want quite a lot of white and a lot more water. So it's a non-existent grey really, and I'm going to paint in sections. Because I want the pole to stay black, you see. To do a little down to the top of the platform wall. Oh, I've already just mocked that up. That's great, isn't it? Ended up not leaving. I might be able to lift that out if I'm quick. Well, that's worked all right. So when you're diluting gouache like this, you can create almost the same sort of effects as you would with watercolour wet in wet. So that the advantage of using gouache for something like this over watercolour, over acrylic, is that it can reconstitute. So you can re-wet it and blend it and soften it. But we're going for something moody. I might need to show you a bit before you do it, because at least then it will make a bit more sense maybe. Maybe I should use a smaller brush instead of trying to do fiddly things with a big brush. So hopefully you can start to see that the black lines remain, and that's just the paper. And because it's sort of dealing with card, it will take a while to settle, but it will help make a cloud look interesting. Oh, you got customer Jackie.
Okay.
I'll use this thin brush to fill in the fiddly bits for now. And sometimes it will take a little bit longer, or the whole feeling will change. of the painting as we move forward. The colours will fade away and do all manner of things, and that's okay. I'm gonna leave, I should have had another line there. Pop that in. So can you see at least the idea of what I want to achieve here? I switch to the bigger brush. It is quite a fiddly piece because there's a lot of lines and wires, isn't there? But actually it makes it quite exciting and different, because you'll see that with gouache the colours will start to be, it will look really, really white. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because if it goes really wrong, what we'll do is we'll spatter rain and snow and what have you. See, there's another line. I think with one of these images, with an image like this, the more lines and things you can add, and we can rub out pencil lines. When it dries. But it's the best way to create something that's different. I mean, yeah, I know it might not be something that you'll have on your wall, but it's a great way of learning a different way of painting. So this technically, as I say, is what would be known as negative painting, because we're painting the space around an object rather than painting the actual object. For now, for this sky, it's negative painting. And we're not using loads of paint or loads of water with any of this. So it does help to create really interesting lines and atmosphere. Just fade that. Fade it by adding more water. And then I'll fade this down with more water, because I don't really know what's going on this bit. But it's good just to have a little bit of something and then fade it away like you would with a graded wash in watercolour. So it makes it quite dramatic having different painting in different angles, and you know, because we're making a glaze, it's going to be slightly different tone each time we use it. And for a scene like this, that's really, really interesting. Because it looks more ambient, I suppose is the right word. It's clever, isn't it? But obviously you could do it with anything, I suppose, but it just works well for something more dramatic like this. And most of the scene is going to be like this. You have to work more backwards than you possibly normally would, because there's more planning involved. You have to work out how light or dark, what are we leaving in, what are we missing out, and all that jazz. I'm just letting it dry a little, just a fraction. So what I'll probably do is I'll do all of the really lighter washes first, and then we'll gradually build up with the brighter washes. So by lighter I mean more water, by brighter I mean more paint. So things like his face and the lights, I want to add last, so we won't get the full drama. This feels like something Tony Hart would have done, but he'd have probably used pastels and a tissue. Right, now the wall I want to keep black. There will be a highlight on the top of the wall, and the pavement I'm going to fade in towards the train. We could put a bench or something on there later, but we'll keep it light. I mean, what's great is that I can, because I'm not using loads of paint and loads of water, I can manipulate it a little to make it a little more subtle if I want. Same for this pavement here. I want it fairly bright, but not massively. It's a bit tricky, so I'm starting on the edges around things. I think some artists call it found found edges or something like that. There's fancy terms for everything. You could just call it painting. So now I'm just going to start adding a bit more water. So gouache is slightly heavier. I know I talk about gouache every time we do it, because it's still, although it's one of the oldest mediums in the world, it's still not widely understood what it is or how it works or whatever. So it's been around since 15th century in England, at least, because we know the Queen Elizabeth's portrait artist, Sir Nicholas Hilliard, used to use it, but it was known as body colour back then because it gave body to watercolours. You had watercolour and then you had white gouache that would be mixed with watercolour paints to give it more body and more opacity. It's only in recent decades, with the invention of, I don't know, poster paint, which is a very rudimentary form of gouache. There's a lot of chalk in it, you see. That works quite nicely. Maybe I'll put a slightly lighter area in here where there might be another light reflecting on the floor. Work wet in wet. So it's a slightly heavier body because of the chalk in it, but that's also what makes it opaque. I'm just going to stipple, I'm stabbing as I'm working to give a bit more of a tarmacy texture. So if you were thinking about going into gouache, you could just buy a really decent quality white gouache and mix it with your watercolours to get colour, which would be a very traditional way of working. I thought we were having some real life people in the class today, but I think it must be too hot. Right, I'll leave that a minute. So I'm going to be leaning on it, so I'd rather it be a little bit drier. I'm not going to rub out any more pencil lines just yet though. Now, I am going to do the side of the platform here, the wall of the platform, if you like, the bit that's got the train dipped. So I'm going to start at the bottom line there. So there's hardly any paint on my brush at all. It's nearly all water. Just to give us an exciting idea of an extra plane. In fact, I could do that to some of the wall with that being such a pale tone. Almost non-existent bit of colour. I don't want it, because this is although it's a mixed media card, I don't want to push my luck and give it more water than it can handle. So I want to be quite sparing with it, because not everything's going to be just harsh black and white. It's nice to have subtleties in it. So it's a monochromatic feel, but in a nice way. But if it all goes wrong, we'll just spatter loads of rain on it. He has got his brolly up after all, and you can see a little bit of the twinkles. Actually, that pale non-existent colour would be really useful for the front bit of the train. There's a little aside, actually there's a few lines. So as it dries, it'll just disappear away, which is good. The devil is in the detail, as always. So we'll see how we get on in the next hour or so. And it does depend. You can put loads of detail in this if you want. You may not want. That's okay also. Lost and found edges, that's what it's called. Lost and found edges. Not a phrase I use. Still a little bit soggy. Got a weird edge there, that the way it's dried. Let's lighten that. Maybe there's a bit of train that you can just see a flash of slightly lighter colour there, and the same down this, but it's always good just to blend it away, because it will dry lighter, not in the same way as watercolours, but it will dry lighter. And if you were struggling to get, when we get to the highlights, if you struggle to get the really light bits fine enough and opaque enough, you can always use a white gel pen. So it's a win-win, really. We've got the top of the roof, the lights, and loads of stuff to do. But I just enjoy the technique. I'm going to do a weird thing now with the little brush. I'll probably do a bit of fingerprinting, because here's where the gravel is and it's just catching the light. So I'm going to do a few little dots and dabs, and then tap it with my finger to print some of it. And if you don't press too heavily, you see, you get a really interesting texture, which is just what we want. I'll do a few more brighter ones. And then that fades away. be a bit on this side as well, technically. Whether I'll be as technical with the tracks as is in the photograph, I don't think I will be. But if we've got a lot of time towards the end and we're not too hot and melty, then maybe. I want to do a little bit inside the umbrella, then we'll probably have a quick stop and I'll make Jackie and I a cup of tea. There are certain parts of this umbrella that are light, but I need them to be a slightly different light to the sky. And if any of it goes really awry, we know we can just add some black paint, but the black paint will affect it in a slightly different way, very slightly. Hardly anything on the right hand side of the umbrella though. Right, so while that's drying, I'm going to go pop the kettle on. I'll be back in about 5 minutes. I'll make Jackie and I a cup of tea, then we can start on the slightly more solid structures, shall we say. See you in a minute. Oh, right. I think I will rub out some of these pencil lines up here. Now I don't need them. Only the ones I don't need. Right. We're sort of slowly but surely starting to think about all the other things within the picture. I'm going to build up the lights, as we've said, so that the main runners of the track are light. But I want to do them a mid-tone to start with, and then fade that back towards the train. A little. We can add more white afterwards. You can always add more. Too many lines there. I think that line shouldn't exist. That was a tentative wonky line. Certainly not the right line for the platform. Right. That tone I'm going to use. You can see how economical this is. I've hardly touched the actual gouache yet, and I've got all of this done. I'm going to do the... I'm going to cheat and just do them across ways. But I'm starting in the middle. A brush width. And the reason I'm starting in the middle is so I can add a little bit more water with each line, or each few lines. Do you know, they should have been going a different direction, I think. It don't matter now. I think they should be more horizontal than that. It's the same for the edge bits. Leave little gaps around them. that. My lines should be slightly more horizontal than that, but once I'd started, I'm committed to that. But it does mean I can do a slightly brighter line right on the top of that rail. And the top of the wall. There might be there's some rivety things in there, so I'll just do little circles. Maybe a few little dots of pebbles within. Just for texture. Stop for a sec. So it's all coming together slowly. I might use some of that slightly brighter white for the top of the rain. Train roof. Because we've got lights and all sorts to add. I'm going to do him last, I think. We'll see if we can get the feeling of light and what have you without him, and then we will have hopefully a bit more confidence for him. In fact, that whiter line has got a little bit more paint in. That pole is getting just hit there by it. Quite a strong edge there. Might use a little bit more just on the top of the center so you can build it up. You see, you don't, with white watercolor it's not opaque enough unless you're using the artist's quality titanium white watercolor, but then you might as well just use gouache if it's highly opaque white you want for certain little tasks, or a gel pen, to be honest. For the areas that are caught by the light. So the white of the platform edge I am going to do next, because it's slightly more opaque. I'm actually going to draw with my brush the line, but I'm going to do it in sort of slab sections in a way. So it's not a solid white line. It's broken like curbstones. And that can just fade away. Use a slightly weaker version for the opposite side of the platform edge. I'll see how that goes as it dries. I'll stop for a minute. Right, there is a light to the left of the train. I'm just going to pop a white circle there. So this is very opaque white. I don't think there are any more visible lights. Could be one behind his umbrella, so we can't see that. So that, I'm just painting a circle of white, and that can be as opaque as you want. Really go for it. Let that dry for a little minute. And then, customer, I'm going to go with a little bit of water and paint around the edge of each one, and just fade it out so the centerpiece will remain opaque. And we'll just get hazier until it disappears to nothing. So I'm basically picking up the pigment of the white paint on the edge and just adding more and more water. As the light fades out, so it diffuses the light considerably around the edge, but leaves opaque white in the middle. But you can always add more opaque white afterwards. that middle light, I think I want to brighten that a little bit more, so I'll add a bit more white to the edge. Nice and effective. We'll let that dry. That's escaped a bit too much. And we can work on our figure. It's looking a bit more like a thing now, isn't it? A thing. Maybe I should just do a little bit more train tracks disappearing underneath the train so it doesn't look like I've given up. That'll do. Slightly light side of hat. Fade down towards the brim. And then I'm going to just give a little light edge of the brim so we know he's got a hat on. There is a couple of light, quite opaque lines on parts of the top of the umbrella. There. And the handle. I'm not doing his face yet. We could do, I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, it's just white, so we're either using more white or less white and more water, so it doesn't make a difference. Maybe we should do his face. And work our way down. So his face is going to be as white as the opaque lights. Oh, that is a nice cup of tea. That could work just like that as it is, I think. Because basically you're putting in some lines and then you're adding water to other areas of it to tone it down and let it melt into the black. His lapel of his coat is quite opaque. Septum piercing. Oh, thanks. If I just add more water to that, then that will fade. Across. We don't want it totally black. There are elements that we want to keep lighter. But that's what you see we can create with the gouache, because we can go back in and reconstitute it in places. There's another bit there that I want. Blend it in. I'll do his arm in a minute, and it'll just be the lighter parts that I'll work on in his arm, and then his trouser legs and his shoe, then we're done. I don't like that hard edge there. I'm going to soften that of the umbrella. Not natural enough. Maybe I need to just lift out a little under his cheek. something slightly more masculine, I think. So it's basically the light shapes. And then a damp brush. Just to soften and blend it in. As I say, this could be done in acrylic really well, but the only issue with acrylics is that it may not necessarily dry slow enough to blend and soften your edges. All it's got to do is trouser legs and his shoe. I love seeing paintings just appear from out of nowhere. I've got an interesting class this afternoon. We're doing watercolour, but it's of a view in a garden looking towards a big greenhouse. So lots of greens and how to get the glass looking reflective and transparent. Quite good. Part of me wants to make more of the while that's drying, maybe I want to make a bit more of a wider line of the lights from the train. Still go very opaque in the middle. More water, more water, more water. Ooh, customer. That'll work. Now I only want a tiny amount of white for his trouser leg because there's not much on there, so I want lots of water more than anything. bit of light on the shoe. It's clever, isn't it, Leslie? It's just by darks and lights. What I might do is I might lighten a little bit behind him with a bit of white. There, look. And fade that out. So he's not outlined. Right, let me stop for a minute and just see if I need any more lighter lines. I probably will need a few to whiten a few more things on here as it dries. Sometimes it's good just to let it dry enough. I don't think I need to do much more. Maybe I'll just lighten, well, make opaque a little more on some of the lights. I think I diluted the edge too much. I don't know whether I should make it rain or not. Should I spatter the rain on? I could lighten parts of the pavement as well, because there are two sections that need to be light. There's another bit there. You know, I'm not sure I can do any more to this that will make it better. I think it is very much what it is, you know. The nearest thing I would probably do is spatter rain, but I'm not sure I want to do that. Just going to put like a poster or something on these, on this wall. Maybe a slightly whiter line. Highlights are really important, but you again, you want to. Jackie's just arrived back from serving, so I will ask her her opinion. Do I make it rain on here by spattering gouache? Jackie's nodding her head coyly.
Yeah, I think so.
You think? Ooh. Right, okay. Leslie said difficult decision. It is difficult, but I value Jackie's opinion. I'm going to hairdryer this as if it's not warm enough in this room. Rub out all my pencil. Get my toothbrush and spatter. Not much, and not overly opaque. But I think he has got his umbrella up, so it is raining. And I think I would be somewhat cowardly to totally not have anything that resembles rain. Here is my toothbrush that is in the water. It's swirling around the white. I'm angling in it from the top. It is good ambience now. Good decision, Jackie. Yeah, we like that. Right, so if you are spattering, I'll just read what's coming up this week. So this afternoon, as I said, it's the a greenhouse in amongst lots of foliage from the outside. We're not inside the greenhouse doing that. Tomorrow afternoon is Roxton Abbey in pen and wash. Saturday morning is our free paint along class at 11 o'clock for an hour and a half, and it's a child on a beach in Wellies in watercolour. Monday morning is a moon over the sea with a little bit of sunset in pastel. That'll be on dark paper. Good. It was the right decision, wasn't it, Leslie? Monday evening is doing the watercolour of the greenhouse and garden. Tuesday afternoon is acrylics, and we're doing a vibrant green snake. Tuesday evening is a tree with mist behind it in pencil. Wednesday afternoon's drawing class is cottages in front of the Seven Sisters Cliffs with a man walking in front. And then next Thursday morning is a misty woodland in acrylics. So a really wonderful week of classes coming up. Let's get my gel pen so I can sign my name on this, because I've enjoyed doing this one. As ever, I will take a photo and post it under the reference image. It's gone very subtle now, and I didn't want it over the top. If I wanted to make it more rainy, I would, or more vibrant, I would add more white paint. But I think actually now it's settled in, it looks a lot better. It just agitates the air, doesn't it? Yeah, I think that's us done then. So thank you so much for your company. It's and if you're watching on catch up, I do look forward to seeing what you've done. I do look at them when you post. So it's just nice to see how you interpret the scene. And I'm glad I gave him a cheekbone. But you'll see it more when it's in the photograph, I think. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. I think we've got cooler weather but thunderstorms on their way over the next couple of days. So be careful, whatever you're doing. But enjoy your weekend. So thanks ever so much, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.